Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. And now, here's John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
Well, welcome into the show. I know it's been about a week, maybe a little bit extra, Brandon, that we've not been able to come on the air. Yeah. I know everybody is like, has it? Like, nobody even noticed it. I always say that, like, people are at home.
You don't say.
like there's people checking like they're looking for the mail every day.
Yeah,
they're like, when's the episode? Yeah. In reality, they're like, oh, really? Okay, I didn't realize.
Didn't really notice.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't. Hey, by the way, hit the subscribe button. That's a good time to remind you of that. Then you would know when those new shows pop up. But seriously, we've had both Brandon and I've been busy with a lot of other things. We both have other jobs. And so that's been pretty hectic, and we've been doing some traveling and stuff. So our last episode with Andy Reese, which was great, we've gotten a lot of good feedback on that episode. Had a chance to talk to Andy a little bit since that episode, and I know he's received some positive feedback as well. And we're going to talk about programming. We are going to be changing up our programming a little bit in the sense that we are going to start posting the shows on Monday. So those of you who were kind of dialed in to what we were doing, Fridays was usually the day that we would post new shows, but we're going to start doing that on Monday for a couple of reasons. One, that it allows our guests to be a little bit more, to be a little bit more flexible with the guests as far as what days we bring them in. So,
yeah, it should be good. I mean, that's the one thing I love about this format, right? Is that it affords everybody, especially the listeners, to hear it whenever they can get to it. So I think it'll be good, and it will give us an opportunity to get some additional guests that we might not be able to get because of scheduling. And I know we've got, potentially a really good guest lined up here in the next week or so.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was telling Brandon today that, one of the things that we like to do is, in the beauty of talking to the people we talk to and being in the circles that we're in, is you get to meet a lot of interesting people, or at least learn about a lot of interesting people. And one of the situations I'm referring to is, I was recently looking at some LinkedIn material that Andy Reese had posted, and he had shared a story by a lady by the name of Ashley Merriman that was about Oliver Mormall, who is actually the manager for the St. Louis Cardinals and a fellow alum from the College of Knowledge, College of Charleston, of course, in South Carolina. And that caught my attention. But then when I started reading a little bit about the article, in the article about the book that Ashley and Poe Bronson had written, and I was really intrigued, because the book is called Top Dog, The Science of Winning and Losing. And Brandon, it's really a cool thing, because it's a book that's kind of like this blend of science and storytelling. And it's all about, the things we talk about on this, the heart of a champion, the thrill of victory, and kind of those character building moments of, that are in the agony of defeat. And there was a quote actually in the book, because I picked up the book and started reading it right when I saw the title. And it talks about how, to be successful, you have to be able to perform when it counts. You have to be able to handle the pressure, and you need to not wilt in the competition.
Right.
And I want to get your thoughts on something, because one of the things, as I was reading in the book, they were talking about how there was a study that was done where they looked at people who were skydiving that had never been skydiving before. They trained them how to skydive. So you imagine, put yourself in this study, is you've never done skydiving before. You agree to participate in this study where they're going to take you up and train you. Mm-hmm. Then you're going to solo jump. So it's not even like a tandem jump. You're going to solo jump. And they were talking about all of the physiological effects that happen with skydivers for the first time, and that some black out, some hyperventilate because they're so nervous that they're not going to get. And there's moments where you potentially can maybe not even remember some of the things you had just been taught. So in preparation for that, they would actually speak to them with a wireless earbud and give them instructions and things like that. Mm-hmm. So they get them up there and they do some samples of some saliva samples where they have them like chew on a sponge for a little bit, and they're wanting to test some markers and stuff to see like what are some of the chemical releases that happen in your body as a result of fear and stress and those types of things. And then they go down, and good news is that they all successfully make this jump. There's about 10 or 12 people. So they all successfully make this jump. So now they're down on the ground, and everybody, of course, is excited. You have that moment of relaxation and release from successfully accomplishing this goal. And they're like, okay, we're going to get back in the plane and we're going to do it again. And so now they've already gone through it once. And so now they make them go through the same process, chewing on the sponge, because they now want to see, the thought behind, or the theory, I should say, is, okay, is it better? Are you going to still be releasing some of the same markers that you did, and have those same levels of stress? And as you would imagine, I'll spare all of the details, but they do this actually 3 times during the day. And as you can imagine, the levels of stress or those chemical markers that would be released in the body do go down. They as you go on throughout the course of the day. And then they started thinking, and I haven't got much further than this, but there was some theory and some hypotheses going on about, so how is this similar to, say, star athletes or military personnel, where is there a point where you are no longer getting that thrill? Like they said that like part of that adrenaline is the thrill of it, right? It's that, being uncomfortable, but comes with that is like a little bit of a thrill and anxiousness and some anxiety. And if does your body almost adapt to this, right? Like to a point where you don't feel that anymore, So
the first thing that comes to mind is a conversation that we had, and Brett McCabe talks about it. Dr. Mose talked about it. The first jump is a commitment. Yeah. The first jump is I'm committed to this because I don't have any confidence yet, and that I know what I'm doing. Jumps 2 and 3 are confident jumps because I've done it, I've experienced it, I've seen it. What I think would be an interesting study, and to answer, I can speak only for myself. I never got to a point that I wasn't excited about playing. I never got to a point that the rush of a big game, the butterflies, excuse me, those things never went away. And I've, again, you go back to, some of the mindset principles where some people could look at that as being anxiousness or excitement. I always looked at it as an exciting time. It did not create anxiety in me. I can for sure see how it would. I think as an athlete, I think what would be interesting is if the study, and it would have to be pretty dynamic because you would have to go do those tests with an athlete who was maybe struggling at the time. And they have to commit to something that they're not confident about.
once we're confident about it, or maybe no longer. Yeah,
for sure, because they've lost that confidence, but they still have to be committed. Yeah. The other thing that's really interesting that I think about from an athletic perspective is where you do seem to get better at is being able to tune out certain things, right? So whether it's the crowd, when you've got to step in the box and it's there's a guy in scoring position and it's the bottom of the ninth and, it's a win or go home scenario. And those are things that most athletes, if you're talking about that have gotten to a professional level, they've seen that, they've had it hundreds of times. Michael Jordan, right? I mean, there's all kinds of stats about the last shot. He took the last shot, I think 800 and something times, and he hit it, 250 or 300 times. That guy has confidence that he can take that shot, and he has the intestinal or fortitude or mental toughness or whatever you want to call it, that there is no anxiety or fear there because one, he's done it. So there's confidence. And more importantly, he's committed. Yeah. I mean, he there's a task at hand and he is committed to it. And so, I think I love that study. I find this is the first that you brought it up. So I've got a lot of thoughts on it, but it's the same thing with Navy SEAL, anybody in the military, anybody that has any kind of task. I mean, heck, there could be someone listening to us that has a presentation tomorrow, right? That creates anxiety and nerves and all that. Or it can be the thing where you get excited and you know that, hey, I'm going to complete this. I'm going to do it to the best of my ability and see what happens.
So what's really cool, and you kind of are touching on this, which was the next step to this, is they find that it's this is me looking through about 5 or 6 pages of this. I can't wait to dig into, and this was just the forward, but the question became, do you almost become at some point desensitized to this rush that you have from a, say a skydiver? So what they found in the little bit of that particular study that was referenced in the book was that the skydivers and the people who have gone up, if that was the effect after 3 jumps, people, as you pointed out, started to get more confident. They started to lose maybe some of that anxiousness. That what would happen after 1,000 jumps? And so what they found was if you're losing that and never really get that back as far as that adrenaline rush, they said what happens is a skydiver it's not the act of going out and jumping from an airplane that gives them the adrenaline rush, that it's actually the ability to stay in control and focused in those types of situations. That is what that juice, that's the thing that keeps them coming back, is that test, that ability. And it's really interesting because I hadn't even thought about bringing this up on the show, but I just saw where Dr. Rob Bell was talking about this the other day in one of his posts on Twitter about, sometimes people are like, oh, I'm going to wait until I do this because I'm going to make sure I'm ready. And it was like, he was just talking about it. I kind of started thinking about that with regards to this study is they find that, even though they've already jumped enough times, what they love and what keeps them coming back is that ability to stay focused in that moment. Same thing with Jordan. I mean, you talked about last second shots and some of the greats and stuff. You think about last inning at-bats. At some point, you've had enough last inning game tied situations, so you've kind of put yourself in that uncomfortable position. But it is a really cool rush to know that you can stay steady in those moments. Like that becomes, for some people, the rush. Like I'm sure there's a whole bunch of different branches to this that I can't wait to dig into with her. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I would think too, maybe at the beginning, getting out of the airplane becomes the rush, right?
Yeah.
And then jumping out of the airplane maybe becomes the thing that you have to do to then get the rush, which
That's
is
right.
So like, it's just
base jumpers and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, it's this process. It's the anxiety of the first day of school or the first practice or your first date or whatever it is. And once you go through the door, which creates the anxiety to begin with, going through the door then that's not the exciting part. I again, speaking for me, I think the exciting part would be to pull that damn cord and the thing finally go up and you'd be like, okay, there's the rush, right? Like, to your point, I'm in control. I just executed what I was supposed to. And now I'm, relatively safely falling to earth.
And I think there's some ego in this as well, though, because it's like I'm looking at that title and having not read the book, but just enough to pique my curiosity. I think Top Dog, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, what is it about your true competitors, your Bradys, your Jordans, the guys that we put on this pedestal that allows them to be these ultimate winners, right? It's like there's some ego that rush almost becomes that ability to be the top dog, to be the best, to be that person.
But those dudes aren't scared. I mean, at the end of it, it's kind of good timing. It's one of the things that we're in the middle of baseball season right now. And it's one of the things that I talked to the team about and actually sent something out to the parents last night. And I just asked them, will you please encourage your children to get uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Right? Because they are if you are afraid to fail, you will never, ever experience greatness. It's just, and those dudes that you mentioned and the people that are successful, yes, they take risks, and yes, they're calculated risks. They're risks from the standpoint of they don't care that there's a million people that are going to see them miss a shot, throw an interception, lose a game, lose a fight, whatever. When I think of a top dog, that alpha has to know that there are other alphas out there, and they may absolutely lose when they go up against another alpha, right?
Yeah.
But they're not scared to.
No.
Because you don't get to be the top dog if you're living in fear of failure. And more importantly, especially in today's environment with social media and this, that, and the other, if you're scared of what other people are going to think of you.
Yeah. And I saw just from some of the book jacket there that there's a lot of talk about kind of that, levels of competition, right?
Sure.
Levels of competitiveness in that, and this, I mean, you go to a neighborhood picnic and everybody, says, oh, let's have a fun game of kickball. Well, all of a sudden the fun game of kickball, it's like, hey, are we keeping score? Okay, now that takes me to another level,
sure.
Right? Like my neighbor, Bob, who may not be as competitive,
right.
He's going to look at that and be like, what in the hell is wrong with this psychopath that's like, taking out our second base?
Hey, John, how about you stop pegging me in the head with the kickball, buddy?
Yeah. So, I mean, it is true. It's like, so everybody kind of comes at this at different levels. And
sure.
I think it's so, yeah, it'll be very interesting. Hey, what a special story we saw. I guess for me, I saw it this morning from yesterday's baseball action in Norfolk, Virginia, where Tyler Zombro, who the listeners will remember was, is still a pitcher, middle reliever for the Durham Bulls, just really in Tampa Bay's organization. And last year had a horrific accident where he was hit with a line drive, batted ball in a game, ironically, against the Norfolk Tide, where, some people, and I don't think I'm probably exaggerating, it was really touch and go for a little bit. I mean,
for sure.
It could have went either direction with all the brain swelling and some of the visuals that we saw on the mound that night in Durham when he got hit. Mm-hmm. And I guess it would have been, a few months later, we were able to get Tyler on the podcast and talk to him about his journey. And just really, I mean, we're coming at it from a standpoint of, gratitude, a lot of gratefulness for the people that were there, for all the support system that he had. And talked about plan, it was all the things that we talk about on the Mental Advantage podcast, all rolled into one that was, on display during Tyler's journey. But one of the things was that resiliency and that tenacity. And Tyler said to us, we were like, what's next? And he's like, I'm coming back. I'm going to go pitch again. Yeah. I mean, it was, and it was like, we kind of asked a question, just like, what's next for you or whatever. And without a shudder or fail. You talk about, having that kind of attitude that we just talked about there with being a top dog. He's like, I'm going back out. It's not going to get me. Right. And so yesterday, up there, Tyler got a chance to come into the ball game and pitch an inning. I think he faced like 4 batters, which of course the box score pales in comparison to just the story. And what was so cool, Brandon, was just seeing, and this is why, I mean, you and I, of course, are biased, but why baseball is just sports in general are just a wonderful thing. But you have that level of respect, I think, in baseball, particularly where guys, they know what he's going through, the grind that it took to get back out there. And right after he finished his warm-up pitches there, you saw a really cool moment where not just his teammates coming out on top step, but it was Norfolk's team all coming out, taking a moment to appreciate, and respect what he had done and was able to accomplish.
Yeah, that's it. It didn't surprise me, right? But for sure, it is one of those things where you go, wow, how did he accomplish that so quick?
Yeah.
And, obviously a lot of hard work, a lot that had to happen on the rehab side, but what the listeners probably have figured out and realized is the work that he probably had to do on the mental side was probably just as difficult, right? I mean, he has a great attitude and all that, but at some point, I would think that you do have to question yourself when you climb back up on top of that hill. Okay, I think he was very fortunate in how everything went down. He told us on the episode where, he was gracious enough to come on, how he really didn't remember it. So there was nothing really for him to be too scared of.
That's true.
Right. But he's seen it and everybody had seen it. And so, and I'm sure doctors sat him down and said, hey, you got to be careful and this, that, and the other. And anyway, I'm super proud of him and we'll always be a fan of his and certainly be pulling for him. I think the mental acuity and flexibility and just toughness that it takes to do what he did is amazing. And, I'm proud of him.
Yeah, no doubt. I was thinking, Brandon, that another thing that I think really helps people like Tyler who come back from some of these really catastrophic injuries and end up playing again is if you only make the return your goal, then I think that probably, I don't know if it's as I don't want to say motivating, but I don't know if you can cling to that as much as you can if a return to playing. Like in Tyler's mind, he's coming back to continue his journey to become a big league pitcher. You know, it's not, I think if you ask Tyler, like, hey, you know, it was nice that I came back and I made this return to playing, but that's not my goal, right? It's not the thing that's driving him. That was step one in the process that's going to continue on my journey to reach my ultimate goal.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, I think that goes for everybody, right? I mean, you've got to make those goals and those dreams big enough and hard enough, right? That it requires you to be consistent with that grind and that effort. And not make that goal just so easily attained.
I see it. This happened so many times. I can't remember where I first saw this, but it's the problem is not aiming too high and missing, but in aiming too low and hitting the mark. You know, Absolutely. It's like if you aim high, you know, give yourself a good stretch goal, get to your point earlier, a little uncomfortable or a lot uncomfortable, depending on what it is, but something that's going to make you feel a little nervous, something that will make you feel a little anxious about it. So nice segue. Speaking of which, because brother, I had a little trip to the doctor this week, and let me tell you something. I talk about commitment. I need to get recommitted to what I'm doing from a weight standpoint, getting in shape. It's amazing, and being a little bit vulnerable here with the listeners, because I think, and I've referenced this before on the show, is a lot of times people think, oh, well, you know, these guys are talking mental performance. They talking some systems and strategies. They got it all figured out. And trust me, it can happen to anybody when it comes to struggles, you know, when not eating right, not being in healthy habits, those types of things. So I will tell you, when I got my numbers back, it was 286.
What?
286. Yeah. So for the listeners who've not seen me in person, which is a lot, thankfully it's a lot. But you know, I'm 6'3", and you know, 286 is still a lot. But it's funny. I was telling somebody that when the nurse, you know, I stood on the scale and she's like 286, and I was like, I felt like this need to start explaining to somebody. I just started giving explanations to her, every excuse you could think of. She's not even paying a bit of attention to me. She's just like I'm halfway through my, you know, moratorium on why I'm a big, you know, heavy slob now. And she's like, okay, that room right there, go on in. Like, just completely blew it off.
Hey, Jabberjaw, I'm going to need you to take your pants off and put on this. Put on this.
She's like, hey, well, we know what's not going to gain weight, your mouth. So
hey, it's hard to imagine that you like to shovel shit there, because it just is constantly moving.
When do you have time to eat?
Hey, are you sure?
So I am recommitting myself, and I'm going to share this weekly with if I remember. A lot of times I'll say I'm going to do this, but I am going to try to remember to share the journey, because I have it figured out now, where I did some research today and I was like, okay, you know, if you lose, say, what's the average? Like 1 to 2 pounds is a healthy way to do it a week. Then that would be about. You know.
I mean, I think like anything else, right? I mean, it's goal setting one. It's making sure that you can do it in a healthy way. And you know, I think the biggest thing is making it something that's sustainable, like consistent and sustainable, right?
Yeah.
So
there's no diets going on here. This is going to be lifestyle changes. It's got to be something that you're going to have the discipline to do it, because right now, and we talk about this on the show, discipline's more important than motivation.
Sure.
I can tell you right now, I'm very motivated to lose weight, but it's going to take discipline because the motivation will be gone, in about a month or a day or whatever the case may be.
And a lot of people, and you and I have talked about this before, kind of off the mic. It's kind of like people that go to the gym, and some maybe have some experience, some maybe don't. The ones that do tend to try to go out and, feel like they can get back to where they were really quick. And I do CrossFit, and I have, some guys that I work out with, and, I for sure, I don't go out hot and heavy on every workout. Right. And there are movements that I will 100% be very, either I'll do not because I can't do them, but because for my overall health, and I won't do them because I just don't find them to be functional for me. And I tell people all the time, the smart athlete is the one that returns tomorrow. And that is such an important thing, whether it's nutrition, whatever it is being able to stack days on days on days.
Yep.
And then something that you and I talk about on the show is allow yourself a grace period to, one, be graceful with yourself when you have a cheat meal or you go out and you have a good time, because you should. Again, everything's in moderation. You can't. Right. You can't beat yourself up because you had a donut or you had a dessert with dinner. It's just, you have to live, but you have to try to do it in a healthy way, and you'll be fine.
And look, and just so the listeners know, the one thing that I will do is implement a lot of the things that we talk about on here. And the first thing being, as you just pointed out, today plus today plus today mentality. It's one day, however many days it takes to get to that goal. But it's also starting, I just mentioned the number, it's above 280. Let's just say that. Right. So the first goal is 280, and then the next goal will be 270. Like, that's the mindset, is just keep giving yourself, keep the goal in front of you when you get to it, but you got to be able to celebrate some of those mini victories so that sure. along the way. And then, like you said, is just, having that grace to say, okay, it's don't let this is what baseball taught us, is don't follow up one error with another error, right? Don't sure. rush. You bobbled the ball. Don't now pick it up and throw it into the right field bleachers. So, if you do have that, day where you fall off the wagon, so to speak, from a eating standpoint, just don't make it 2 days in a row.
So what? Yeah. It's a meal. It's, and again, the Stoics would tell you that we're all, death is undefeated. Right. And so the stuff that you worry about, if you will keep certain things in perspective, one meal here or there isn't the end of the world. It's not. Yeah. You're going to be fine. And
just can't treat every day like Thanksgiving, like I had been doing. So.
I was wondering why you had that cornucopia in front of the microphone.
That's right. All right, brother. Well, hopefully we'll have a chance to chat with some of these amazing guests next week.
Absolutely.
I know we've got some people lined up, and we're looking forward to starting that conversation. And again, Mondays is the day, for those of you keeping score at home, of that you'll be able to get the podcast coming out. Or it could be Tuesday or Wednesday. It depends on when you look at your podcast. Like, it doesn't have to be Monday. It's just that's when the new episode will be released.
That's right.
So, and start looking, by the way, Brandon, I haven't even told you this. We do have a TikTok channel. There's only one video on there right now, but I do plan on starting to post more videos, and Brandon can, get involved with some of his TikTok dances he's known for.
I am wildly viral. Yeah. For all the wrong reasons.
I wasn't going to touch it. I was going to let you.
Come on. Yeah.
Because it's viral. That's
exactly.
All right, man. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, buddy. Good job. See you.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.